July 30th, 2024. Well, Biden has now come forward with his proposal to attack the conservative majority on the Supreme Court, um, in which he's proposing that because of not liking certain decisions that have happened recently and the way things came out, and we could get into why it came out that way. But essentially, he's proposing that the Supreme Court's terms be limited to 18 years and by legislation. And of course, this is completely unconstitutional because the Constitution specifies that the term of the federal judges, that's district, appellate, and Supreme Court, will be as a lifetime appointment. So the only way that they get out is through their death, through their resignation, or through impeachment and conviction, by the way. And conviction requires a 2/3 vote in the Senate. So the issue here is that with the administrative state kind of spinning out of control, to say the least, anyhow, that they're posing that the Supreme Court currently is such a great threat. Now, and so the idea then would the president would then appoint a one judge every 2 years, one justice every 2 years, and so that over the course of 18 years you completely rotate through who's on the court. It's as an idea in theory, it might be interesting, and in fact, if this had been the system had been in place over the span of, let's say, my entire lifetime, it might have been a good idea actually. The problem with it is that they only want to do it now when they just happen to have a fairly strong conservative majority on the court. However, I think that over the course of the years, we've had very strong liberal majorities over the courts, and nobody changed the system for all that period. And so, essentially, but the real showstopper in this whole thing is he wants to do it with legislation from Congress. And the fact of the matter is that these appointments are lifetime appointments, and what he's proposing is unconstitutional. And so, of course, the problem it has is even if, of course, right now it's not going to happen because, for one thing, the Republicans control the House of Representatives, and the law has to be passed by both houses. So, I think Speaker Johnson's already said that it's dead on arrival. So I don't think it's going to be happening anytime soon, so to speak. On the Senate side, we still have the filibuster because there's these two ex-Democrats, now independents. Why are they independent? Well, I guess because they didn't want to go along with the Democrats' power seizure plans. And so the result is that they had had left the Democrat Party and became independents, although they still caucus with the Democrats. So they're still an asset for the Democrats, but they're not the asset they wanted. And they're both going to be, that is, of course, Sinema and Manchin. And they're both going to be out of office by the end of this term. So what we get next term will be kind of critical. And so anyhow, but so until the Democrats actually get a control of the whole government, by which I mean the Congress and the presidency, this won't pass. But and here's, even if it did pass, the Supreme Court could simply declare it unconstitutional. And of course, then we would get to the next phase of the problem. But anyhow, that's what's afoot, and yet they're saying that we're the one that's a threat to the system, so to speak. By the way, if you like these videos, please give me a like. We're looking for more, it helps with the algorithms, and look and subscribe either on YouTube or I'm also on Rumble. So either way, I post the videos both places. And of course, on YouTube, you can click the bell for notifications. Yeah, this is, so at any rate, this is what's afoot here. And this is supposedly something he came up with to appease the ultra left when he was trying to save his presidency, his re-election bid, which of course was basically, he was eventually ousted. So that kind of ended that whole episode. And the other thing that's in this proposal, of course, is a constitutional amendment. I wonder why that has to be a constitutional amendment. Well, because I guess they would be trying to overturn the Supreme Court, and of course, they know they would overturn that one. I guess maybe they're hoping that they won't overturn the other one. And so that one is this thing to try to reverse the so-called presidential immunity, which is another bogus Democrat propaganda front, which is kind of, because first of all they misconstrue what the immunity decision really did, and then at the same time that they're trying to make out like this is some really outrageous thing. But actually, I mean, there's also prosecutorial immunity also, and so forth. I mean, this has to do with official acts of the president, and so far they're continuing to pretend like that it's something else. And so, well, I'll explain what that is next. Because the thing is that the courts are the ones that are going to decide what is and what is not an official act, and not the president. So, in other words, effectively, what that would do is to say that if, for instance, President Obama had an American citizen killed overseas in a drone strike because he was leading a terrorist group, that he couldn't be like charged with murder by, say, a Republican prosecutor at a later date, because that would be that at least he would have a legal defense if that charge were brought forward, that it was an official act of foreign policy and defense policy. Okay, so that's essentially the kind of thing it would be. It wouldn't say they could decide to not pay his income taxes, or engage in fraud, or I don't know, rape a woman, or have a political opponent assassinated domestically, because those would be not considered official acts of office. That would be legitimate constitutional functions of the office. Essentially, the immunity provision that the Supreme Court ruled was essentially trying to prevent partisan lawfare against presidents, basically pressing charges that are completely illegitimate. That's essentially what it was. And in the case of President Trump, or former President Trump, it's totally unclear to what degree that will actually end up protecting him from the lawfare charges that have been waged. I think that it might very well go a long ways against some of the D.C. charges that Jack Smith had, because of certain things. However, the most effective thing that they did was something totally separate from that, and that was over saying that what's generally referred to as the Enron of official obstruction of official processes, or whatever law, which was really about people destroying records and SEC cases and stuff. I mean, and things of that sort, and other legal proceedings. That doesn't apply to people engaged in, say, protests or things of that sort. So effectively, they shot down at least two, I think, of the charges in the D.C. case. Now, the others, who knows? I mean, that's going to have to be adjudicated by courts, and I think partly the main effect is it will probably delay things until after the election's over. And if Trump were to win the election, he presumably could have his attorney general would drop the charges. It's even conceivable that it could be a self-pardon, or what I might call a virtual self-pardon, which is you would step down to the 25th Amendment, have your vice president assume the role of presidency, pardon you, and then you would then announce that you've now can resume the powers of presidency, and you'd be back in. That's another approach that could be done. That'll be interesting if it ever comes to that. But on the other hand, if he loses the election, I guess they'll go ahead and prosecute him, and who knows what happens to him in that case. That's kind of the, I guess, the penalty of losing the election, maybe, huh? But at any rate, that's the sort of thing that would be. But the point is that this is not something that requires a constitutional amendment to reverse, because, like I say, anything that would be really invalid would the courts themselves would presumably not say, would not let him use that as a defense. But it would be a defense you could have against lawfare charges of various sorts. So I don't think that Trump got all he really wanted in his appeal, but I think the main point again was delaying. But let's get back to what's really important, and that is this 18-month thing. In order to do that legitimately, you would have to have a constitutional amendment. And of course, that would require, a 2/3 vote in both houses, and then 3/4 of states would have to ratify it according to the standard approach. There are other approaches that might have a constitutional convention, but I doubt that you're going to get enough states to call one of those either. So, for this subject, so I think that's kind of, and even then it would have to take 3/4 to ratify it. So the point of the matter is, I don't think either is really going to happen. This is all partisan warfare that we're used to be getting. So we'll see what happens. But I guess Kamala is going to be running on this, among other things, among many of her other radical positions. So anyhow, anyway, I just thought I'd kind of go through this because I think this is another kind of despicable move. Remember, these are positions that Biden himself said he was against when he was running for president. And I mean, I don't think anything since then has changed philosophically. Everybody realized what could happen, and eventually, what would probably come from all this once it got struck down, I would think, would be that they would then go to the court packing idea of adding 4 more justices to the court in order to pack it, or maybe even more, who knows. And then if they lost power, then presumably the Republicans would have to correspond with even more, and we'd have an unwieldy court that'd be really out of control. So I don't know, but that's what he's proposing, and I think that's how it'll be disposed of. But it's every reason you would want to make sure you go out and vote for Republicans this year to shut these people down before they do even more damage. Well, and one other thing I would like to get into briefly here is I had commented on this in some previous videos about the assassination attempt on Trump. Having heard some more videos, or the sound of more videos of the event, I think it's pretty clear from the sound effects of it that we can pretty well say that there were 8 shots fired by the assassin with the AR-15, and then I think it's pretty clear cut that was followed by 2 shots spaced apart by several seconds with a suppressed rifle, presumably from the Secret Service counter snipers. And so I believe that before I was questioning whether there were 2 shots, now I think pretty much that there were 2 sniper shots as well, spaced a few seconds apart. And by the way, to briefly get into this, I think I would also say that we can explain what was seen in these body cam videos of police on the roof of the building. It looks to me like that probably after the first counter sniper shot came in right after he got off his 5 rounds. I think that round missed, but probably hit close enough to scare the heck out of him, I think. And so he presumably dropped let go of his rifle and was crawling out of there when he then got hit by the second shot a few seconds later. And that would explain why his body was in the pattern between the shell casings that were that were ejected from his rifle. So I think that all makes a little bit more sense now. So I just thought I'd add that as an addendum to things I'd said previously. So, well, if you like these videos, like I said, you can follow me on either YouTube or Rumble, where I post it, and then of course the addresses of my social media accounts are in the description below. All for now.